Joseph Falcon says, is it important to manage the load during hypertrophy block, for example, during PPL? During PPL, push-pull legs? No, I feel like... No, that might be push. Push-pull legs, yeah. Should somebody take a deload every 4 weeks or so? So I suppose, Joseph, in terms of like load, when you mean load, do you mean... When you say load to me, what I'm thinking is the actual weight or your total volume or total tonnage or total intensity, like the weights on the bar. So when you say load to me... I assume you mean just the entire load in your training. I think there was an article in Journal of Strength and Conditioning about this recently, about why there's no definite term for load. But when you say load to me, I mean like, what I immediately thought of was like, do you think you should be increasing the weights each one? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so even for hypertrophy and strength, you still need to be increasing the weights. You need to be progressing through that. A deload every 4 weeks or so. What we usually recommend for this is, if you feel like you need it, take one, but it's not great to be taking deload weeks in inappropriate places. So if you're on like an 8-week progression, for example, and you take a deload on like week 4 between 5, it's not bad. It mostly doesn't cause any issues, but you can kind of end up wasting a lot of time. Sometimes you can kind of ruin your momentum a little bit. I feel 4 weeks is too much, but it will definitely work well. So every 4 weeks will almost certainly do what you want it to do. Mm-hmm. If there's a spectrum of very, very safe and very, very not safe, I put deloading every 4 weeks here. So it's nice and safe. It puts you in a great position. You'll always dissipate the fatigue. You'll almost certainly help avoid injuries from overtraining or overload. But I think you'll just end up wasting a lot of weeks over the course of the year. And I think... it's so many weeks that it might have a mild negative impact, I think.
Yeah. We talk about like the perfect tool for the job a lot, right? So what's the most effective training program, efficient use of your time? And we talk about it in the case of like surgeon's scalpel versus a sledgehammer, you know? In the case of like power building or power lifting, I think every 4 weeks is just a bit too much. Like when you look at...
maybe not with hypertrophy.
I think so.
I don't think with hypertrophy it is.
I think 10 weeks. Because if you're having to go every 4 weeks, you're probably just pushing it too hard. And like hypertrophy training isn't about the training itself. Hypertrophy training is about the recovery from training.
So in his case, he's asking specifically for hypertrophy, right? So I actually think for every 4 weeks would be good. Because in hypertrophy... you can make bigger jumps because they're so low compared to your absolute intensity. So if you're doing like 4x10s and you're finishing on 4x8s, you know, so if you have like 2 weeks of 10s and 2 weeks of 8s, for example, you can really push the relative intensity, you know, the burn, the pump, you know, and you can make that last week tough and then reset again. But
it does all come down to as well, whether he's talking about load as in load with intensity or load as in load with volume intensity.
I think that's what he's talking about, because then he was asking about deload every 4 weeks. So I would say for hypertrophy, I think you could certainly make effective 4 week training blocks. I don't think you could go much long. See, hypertrophy is a little bit weird because it also depends then on your calories you're consuming and what you're doing in training. So if you, for example, are going from 90 to 95 kilos body weight and you're doing that over the course of 2 months, you could probably only you'd fit probably one deload in there, but you might maybe it wouldn't even be deload, so it'd be like a step down a little bit. So you'd start at this point, you deload to like you bump up to S up here, and you download just a little bit here, and then wave up again for that kind of that 8 week block. But would I ever, for example, go up here and then back down here again in the middle of hypertrophy if you're eating 4,000 calories a day? No, that'd be a waste of a week. If then, for example, if you're doing a hypertrophy phase during a cut, then you will have much smaller amplitudes of increases in load, I suppose, if we're talking about like training volume plus your intensity, for example, your overall training load, then you will probably have... everything will be slightly less anyway, so you probably won't be taking a very aggressive absolute deload then. Just in the context of hypertrophy.
Just in the context of, I still think 4 weeks is too often.
I think you could make it work really well.
You could.
Yeah, but you don't have to.
If
this was, for example, weightlifting, we really see with weightlifters, like, if you might get to 4.5 weeks and things go like, for most amateur weightlifters now, you can get to like 4.5 weeks, and then maybe like the 5th day of that week before weightlifters just be like, I'm so tired.
I think I really like people to go very far into the trough.
Yes.
I like it to be noticeable in someone's training that they need a deload. And that's what I think is best.
That's what you see in weightlifting, I've found.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm really tired.
It's very clear. It's very obvious to everyone involved. Coach, athlete.
Yes.
Very clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
But for hypertrophy, I think you'll just have to...
Do you even need it?
Yes.
I don't think you do. Like, hypertrophy training is... If it's planned well, I don't think you would need a deload. If it's planned well.
I think if you're... I think what you could probably do, or what you'd probably want to do, is you're probably going to be maybe sick of those exercises after 4 weeks if you're keeping... If you're doing, like, the same stuff. I think you'd probably want to change them. And so, realistically, you'll end up with... obviously, the correct thing, the smarter thing to do there would be end up with, like, getting back to a start of those. So if you're doing, like, I don't know, RDLs, and then you're like, you know, I'm fucking sick of RDLs, so I'm going to do, like, deficit stiff-legged deadlifts. You're not going to... The weights aren't going to be in any way the same, and so you need to start a new progression then for those, you know. So I would say how I would imagine it, if I was thinking about hypertrophy block, it would be 4 weeks of some exercises, and then change again, and 4 weeks of new exercises. And
then that becomes a deload by proxy.
Yeah.
Because you're not immediately going to be able to get high intensity in a new exercise. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think people are just... And this is nothing against... is it Joseph Falcon? Mm-hmm. This is nothing against you, Joseph. This is just something we come up against very regularly. And I think, in general, people are a bit soft on themselves. They'll go really, really hard in certain points, and they'll fuck up their training that way, but it's very rarely that they do too long of consistent training, long enough where they fuck their training up.
Like, what's going to happen to a natural bodybuilder who goes too far into the red for hypertrophy training, realistically?
Nothing.
Maybe some...
They'll just overtrain. They won't get the positive adaptation in terms of hypertrophy, because they won't be able to recover. But if it's well planned and you're well recovered,
like... The only thing I would see happening is tendon issues, maybe, on like the bigger lifts, and primarily like maybe in the knee stuff. But realistically, you're not going to do that high frequency and on hypertrophy stuff. After we come back from Romania on, I don't know, maybe we might record this in Romania on the mid bar technique position, so a hybrid bar. So that'd be a good one as well.
Just there was a fly flying around there, by the way.
I'm sure there was. Yeah,
swatting the air.